Alright guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. Today I'm going to be running you through the top 3 mistakes I see beginners make in Lightroom all the time. And hopefully you'll be able to, assist yourself or stop yourself from making these mistakes in the future as well, and that'll level you up into a better editor. So without further ado, and without wasting any more of your time, let's dive into Lightroom. Let's get into mistake number 1. Alright, so here we are in Lightroom, and as you can see, we've got this shot up shooting straight into the sun over these beautiful sand dunes in Dubai. It's gorgeous out there. I absolutely love this photo, but you can clearly see that the sun is super bright. And what I want to talk to you about is clipping. Now, clipping is simply when you have no information in a part of your shot because it's either completely white or completely black. There, of course, is a range that your camera can expose for. It's called your dynamic range, and you can push it way too far or you can push it way too low, and you're going to lose information in a certain part of your image. So I'm going to show you exactly what that is and how you can fix it. So first of all, we have a look at this photo here. Now, looking up into the right corner of Lightroom, you can see we've got the histogram. So if you have a look here, in this section here, it represents the whites, and in this bottom section here, it represents the blacks. So as you can see, right on the corner here, we have nothing touching the blacks, which means nothing is clipping, which is perfect. And if you have a look all the way up to the right here on the whites, we can see a little bit is touching, which is the sun. And that is clipping, which means we currently don't have any information there at all. Now, we can check if we can restore the information purely just by dragging the highlights down, which we can. We can now see that the whites have gone off the edge of the histogram, which means the sensor was able to capture enough detail in those in the highlights there to make sure we aren't clipping. But for this photo, I really do like the sun exploding. And of course, you want to be able to take this with a grain of salt and make sure that you're making the right stylistic choice for your photo. If you're backlighting a subject, the last thing you want to do is make your subject really dark and then to make sure that the background isn't clipping. But 9 times out of 10, unless you're shooting directly into sunlight or you are backlighting your subject, you don't want any clipping in your photo at all. Okay. So apart from the histogram, there's one other way to be able to check if your photo is clipping. This is my personal favorite way. You simply press J. Now, as you can see there, we've got this little red dot on the screen, and that indicates that this part is clipping and there's no information. So if I export this photo as is on that red circle there, there's going to be no information and it will be pure white. Now we can do the same thing with the blacks. If I start dropping the blacks here, we can see now blue is starting to come onto the image, and that is where there is no information whatsoever. Now if I press J, you can see down there it's very dark, and these parts, which is pretty much everything below the sun, is just completely black. There's no information there at all. So let's remove that, and we can do the same thing here. If I just increase the exposure, we're going to get a huge bit of red up there, and that means it's completely white. J to turn it off, J to turn it back on. Of course, we're going to bring that back down, and that is mistake number 1. Guys, make sure you're not clipping your images because it's one of the easiest ways to stand out as a beginner photographer and a beginner editor. Okay, moving on to mistake number 2, and this is pushing or pulling the colors way too far and then having your image fall apart. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Let's say that I was a beginner editor and I had a bit of a spring in my step and I was really keen to dive in and change some crazy stuff on this image. First of all, I'd say steady tiger. But the other thing is you have to keep in mind when you're editing, you can only push and pull things so far. If I, for example, was going to change this orange into blue for some ungodly reason, it's just not going to look clean at all. And let me show you exactly what I mean. Let's start making some really big changes to this image, just some disgusting stuff. Make it look absolutely horrible. I'm not sure how much blue is in there. We're going to change the tint. We are going to decrease the temperature. And as you can see here, things are not looking nice. If we zoom in, we'll be actually able to see the image falling apart in certain areas. Now, I know that this is a cloud here, but as you can see, any harsh, disgusting lines, for example, up in here, all of these like little blotchy areas, this is the image falling apart. If I show you the before, as you can see, it's very nice. We have a nice consistent grade through. Now here, it's completely falling apart. We go before, we have a nice from, I would say, a yellowy orange into a red. Now we're going from red to yellow green, and you can see all the blotchy little areas, and this is the image falling apart. You just don't want to push your image to this point. So how can you avoid this? Well, first of all, don't do any edits like this. This is disgusting. We're gonna reset these sliders to make them, I guess, just a little bit back to normal, which is nice. And one of the best ways that I really like to make sure I'm not pushing anything too far is purely using a limit on how far I can and can't push sliders. I find this more effective when I am adding saturation versus when I'm taking saturation away. So let's say I wanted to take away all the yellows. It's gonna be less, I guess, invasive than if I were to add heaps of yellow. Okay, maybe it's not the best example here, but you get the overall point. I purely just don't want to ever go past, I would say, like 85 on anything. That's it. I make sure there's always a little buffer, because if I pull or push something way too far, chances are it's going to be too much, and then my image will either look really cheap and ugly, or it's going to start to fall apart. And when I export it, chances are it's going to fall apart even more, because there's some compression that goes on. And right now what we're seeing is the absolute rawest version of the photo, but once exported plus uploaded to Instagram, and that compression, believe me, you won't be having a good time. You'll have banding in the sky, weird blotchy parts, particles everywhere, and it won't look good. All right, moving on to mistake number 3, last but not least, is adding fake light where it doesn't make sense. Let me show you. Let's dive into this photo here. As you can see, this is me in a beautiful location out here in Bali. And you can clearly see that the light is coming from the right. The sun is coming up on the right, and we can see that, I guess, purely just through the shadows, as this part is bright, this part is dark, and just naturally your eyes move to the right side of the image because that's where the light is coming from. It's brighter on that side and darker on the left side. This is perfect. Let's say we were to just add a quick preset to, I guess, get this edit off the ground. Oh, I like this here. We might just quickly adjust the exposure a little bit. Okay. Very quick edit, perfect. If you want to check out my presets, by the way, use this code at checkout for a cheeky little discount. As you can see, they speed up your editing workflow like crazy. I absolutely love my portrait pack, by the way. I use this for a stack of stuff. And as you can see, one click and you're done. You're more or less good to go. But anyway, let's say we just finished our edit here, and we are just going to quickly add a radial gradient around me to add just a little bit more contrast here. Okay, and let's say we're finished now and we want to add a little bit of spice, a little bit of light in. The correct way to do it would be to add it from the right-hand side, pushing in. But I've seen it way too many times where people will add light from the wrong side of the image. So let's just say for conversation, I had no idea what I was doing and I wanted to add light here. I put the mask on, I increased the exposure a little bit, I dropped the clarity and I dropped the dehaze. Wow, things are looking great. And then I increased the temperature a little bit. It makes no sense. Sure, this may not be the absolute best way, the best example to show you, but you really just want to lean into where the light is coming from. Or if you're shooting with the light behind you or the light in front of you, don't add fake light. It looks horrible, and it's a very quick and easy way to stand out as a beginner editor and a beginner photographer. But guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. There are my top 3 beginner editing mistakes I see every single photographer make all the time. Okay, sure, not every single photographer, but every single beginner photographer, and every single photographer had to start somewhere. Therefore, every photographer was a beginner, and I've seen nearly every photographer make every single one of these mistakes. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up today's video. If you have enjoyed, let me know down below. If you're new around here, subscribe. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.